My name is Eliza. I'm 34, and I run a tech company, and when I came back from my vacation, the driveway was empty. My custom nameplate was gone from the gate, leaving just two raw, empty drill holes in the stone. My mother, Brenda, stood on the porch. That smile. It was tight, forced. My sister, Liv, was leaning against a brand new white car, lazily swirling the keys around her finger like she'd just won the lottery. I looked past them. At my house. The curtains were different. Liv grinned, all teeth. Bad news, genius. You don't live here anymore. My mother chimed in, that fake, airy voice. We sold the house, Eliza. We just had to. Needed the money to pay your sister's debts. You were gone too long. They waited. They were waiting for the tears, the screaming, the breakdown. So I smiled. Just a small, quiet smile. Liv's grin faltered. What's so funny? I looked up at the balcony. Nothing. Just, tell me something. When did you finalize the sale? Brenda puffed up, proud. Last week. Got a great price too. Cash in hand. I nodded. The air felt electric. The heat rose in my chest, but my voice was ice. I know. I recommended him. Have you ever realized, just a second too late, that the people closest to you are the ones holding the sharpest knives? Stick around to see how a 6-month trap clicks shut. Their shock in the driveway felt good, but it wasn't the beginning. The real beginning was 6 months ago, the last normal family dinner I ever hosted. I remember the smell of the roast chicken I'd had catered, the sound of the expensive wine I bought, being poured into the heavy crystal glasses I owned. We were in my dining room, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. My success built this room. My success paid for everything on the table. And, as always, my success was being asked to pay for my sister's failures. Liv was crying. Not real tears, those were rare. These were the wet, performative kind, the ones designed to pull focus, to signal a crisis. She'd done it again. Another once-in-a-lifetime investment that turned out to be a scam. Another guy who'd promised her the world and left her with thousands in debt. I just don't know how it keeps happening, she whispered, looking at my mother. Brenda, my mother, immediately jumped in, rubbing Liv's back. Oh, stop it, Eliza, she said, cutting me off before I'd even spoken. You don't understand. Liv is just too trusting. She has a good heart. She's a victim in all this. A victim. At 29 years old, Liv was perpetually the victim, and I, at 34, was perpetually the responsible one. In my family, responsible is just a polite word for the ATM. I tried, one last time. Mom, this is the 3rd time this year. She can't keep doing this. She needs to learn. Brenda's eyes went cold. Family helps family, Eliza. You, of all people, should know that. You have so much. It's easy for you. Easy. Was it easy when I was working 80-hour weeks to get my company off the ground? Was it easy when I was sleeping on my office floor while Liv was out partying? I looked at my sister, dabbing her perfectly dry eyes. I looked at my mother, staring at me with that hard, expectant glare. The entire dinner, the entire relationship, was hostage to this one. Unspoken demand. Pay up. So I did. Again. I pulled out my phone. The sound of my banking app opening felt deafeningly loud in the silence. I typed in the numbers. I paid off her last mess. And as I set the phone down on the polished wood table, a thought, cold and clear, cut right through the resentment. That's when I realized love doesn't blind. It rots. It decays. It turns into this sick, sprawling entitlement. It hollows you out until you're just a resource to be mined. And I knew, watching Liv's tears miraculously dry up as she checked her own phone, this was the last time. The last time. That vow changed me. It woke up the CEO, the part of me that doesn't just trust, but verifies. A month later, the paranoia set in. It was 3 a.m. I was in my home office, the only light coming from my dual monitors. An automated security alert from my business server. Probably nothing. But probably nothing is how empires fall. I ran a diagnostic, just to be safe. And then, just to be sure, I checked my personal property records, my bank documents, my private legal folders, and there it was. In the access logs, a name that had no business being there, Brenda. My mother. She wasn't just looking, she was digging, poking around in my mortgage deeds, accessing files on my property holdings. Why? Why was my mother snooping in my legal archives? The cold feeling from that dinner returned, but this time it wasn't realization, it was ice. The paranoia wasn't paranoia at all. It was instinct. The rot was deeper than I could have ever imagined. Instinct is one thing, data is another. As a CEO, I live by data. So, I started to dig. I didn't just look at my files, I started pulling server logs from my home network. I cross-referenced IP addresses. My mother's phone, her laptop, they'd been accessing my private cloud storage. But they were sloppy. They'd used my guest Wi-Fi to do it. They thought they were being clever. They were just loud. I traced their digital footprints. I saw the search histories. How to file for power of attorney. Can a family member sell a house without the owner? Emergency power of attorney forms. The casual audacity of it. It made my blood run cold. They were planning this. They weren't just thinking about it. They were researching. And then I found it. It wasn't in my main inbox. It was in a deep archive folder, in a backup of a backup, an email chain, a zip file attached. The subject line was innocuous. Updated estate documents. I'd never seen this email before. It was routed from my own lawyer's office, but it wasn't from my lawyer. It was from a paralegal I'd never heard of. And it was CC'd to an email address I didn't recognize. Until I realized it was a new, secret account my mother must have created. I unzipped the file. My stomach lurched. It was a letter. An unsigned draft, on my lawyer's letterhead. It was a cover letter, for a fully executed power of attorney, granting sweeping and total control of my assets, my properties, my accounts, to Brenda, my mother. In the event of my absence or incapacitation, it read. I wasn't incapacitated, I was just in their way. I scrolled to the last page of the attached POA document, and there it was. My signature. Except it wasn't. I've signed 1,000-page contracts. I've signed Series A funding rounds. I know my signature. I know the exact pressure of the pen stroke on the E. I know the loop on the Z. This one was close. Agonizingly close. My mother had seen me sign checks, cards, and documents my entire life. She'd clearly practiced, but she got the loop on the Z's wrong. It was too perfect, too round. It was a forgery, a meticulous, cowardly, devastating forgery. This wasn't a desperate grab for cash, this was a coup. This was an execution. They were trying to erase me from my own life. They weren't just stealing my money, they were stealing me, my name, my legal identity. My office was dark, but the white light from the monitor felt like a spotlight in a prison. My fingers were numb on the keyboard. That's when the warmth left me. I don't mean I got angry. Anger is hot. Anger is loud. This was the opposite. It was a perfect, crystalline, cold clarity. The part of me that was a daughter, the part that hoped, that forgave, that loved it just switched off. It died right there, in front of the screen. And the CEO, the strategist, the part of me that builds, plans, and wins, she took the wheel. I leaned back in my chair. The house was silent. They were making their move. They thought I was blind. I made the most important decision of my life. I didn't call my lawyer. I didn't call the police. I didn't storm down the hall and confront them. No, confrontation is what they'd expect. It's what Liv would do. They were counting on a family argument. They were counting on me to be emotional. So I did nothing. I closed the file. I cleared my browser cache. I decided, in that moment, to let them. Let them think they were getting away with it. Let them build their entire fraudulent case. Because I wasn't just going to stop them. I was going to observe. I was going to document. And I was going to build a better trap. Weeks turned into months. On the surface, everything was normal. I'd go to work. I'd host the occasional, tense family dinner. I listened to Liv complain about her job hunt. I listened to Brenda complain about, well, everything. But beneath the surface, I was at war. I became a ghost in my own home. I put micro recorders in the living room, near the phone. I upgraded my home network, not for speed, but for surveillance. I now had a mirror of every text, every email, every search query that crossed my router. I learned everything. I heard the whispered phone calls, the hushed meetings they'd have in the kitchen the moment they thought I'd left for the office. I learned the name of the shady, cut-rate lawyer they were using. I learned about the plan. Eliza's been so stressed, I heard Brenda say on a call. She's working too hard. I'm worried she's heading for a breakdown. A breakdown. That was the narrative. They weren't just forging a document. They were building a story. A story where my mother, the loving matriarch, had to step in and manage my affairs for my own good. It was meticulously evil. They thought I was the soft one, the family workhorse, the reliable, forgiving, emotional one who they could guilt-trip and gaslight. That's the thing about family. Once they think you'll always forgive them, they stop hiding their knives. They get lazy. They get arrogant. They assume you're too buried in love, or obligation, or shame, to ever see the blade. They were counting on the daughter. They forgot about the CEO. They don't know who I am. My entire life is built on strategy. I don't just build tech. I build systems. I analyze risk. I run multi-year projections. I see 10 moves ahead. My business isn't just business. It's strategy. So, I activated my real assets, not my bank accounts, my corporate structure. I pulled up the files on my holding company. The one I use for high-risk acquisitions. The one that's legally firewalled from my personal identity. And I looked at my property map. This is the part they never knew. The part they couldn't have known. A year ago, when I first bought this land, I didn't just buy this plot. As a developer, even in tech, you learn to think like a developer. I always buy the buffer. I'd also purchase the adjoining, undeveloped plot, a silent, off-market deal, registered under that same silent holding company. It was just sitting there, an empty patch of land, legally distinct, but sharing the same street address extension. It was my foundational lie. While they were practicing my signature, I was on a quiet call with my real lawyers, the expensive ones. I filed a series of legal moves that took less than an hour. First, I executed a quiet title transfer. The real deed to my real house, the physical building I was sitting in, was moved. I transferred it out of my personal name and into my holding company. It was now a corporate asset, completely insulated from my personal life and from any personal power of attorney. Second, I looked at the old registration. The original deed, the one still in my name. The one they were targeting. I let them have it. I reissued that title, linking it not to my house, but to the empty plot next door. Then, I just waited. I made sure all the public-facing documents, the ones their bargain bin lawyer would find, pointed to that decoy title. I made sure the forged power of attorney matched that decoy. They thought they were setting a trap for me. They were walking, step by step, into a legal kill box that I had designed. They thought they were about to steal my home. In reality, they were fighting tooth and nail to fraudulently sell an empty patch of dirt, and I was about to let them win. While they were plotting in my kitchen, I was building in the shadows. My holding company isn't just for paperwork, it has a construction arm. While my mother and sister were busy congratulating themselves, I was breaking ground on the adjoining plot, the one they didn't even know existed. They heard the noise, of course. The sound of foundation work, of trucks, of framing. "Who's building so close?" Liv complained one morning, annoyed that the noise was interrupting her job search. "Just some new developer," I'd said, not looking up from my laptop. "They're putting up a spec home." A spec home. That's what I called it. But it wasn't just a spec home. It was my home. A mirror image. A ghost. I used the same architectural plans as my current house. The exact same ones. Same square footage. Same layout. The same balcony off the master bedroom. The same floor-to-ceiling windows for the dining room. I was building my fortress, right next door, hidden in plain sight. It was a race. They were racing to steal my house, while I was racing to replace it. All my real assets, my art, my servers, my life. I began moving them, piece by piece, in the dead of night, from the target house to the real house. While that was happening, I was also playing defense. I got an alert from my real lawyer. The forged power of attorney had been officially filed with the county. My lawyer was frantic. Eliza, this is a 5-alarm fire. We have to file an injunction. We have to stop this now. I told him no. No? He nearly shouted through the phone. They could sell your house out from under you by end of day. Let them, I said. My voice was calm. Don't fight it. Let it go through. I want the filing to be valid. Valid? Eliza, that's insane. It's not insane, it's evidence. Let them think they have control of my primary asset. Let them think they've won. I was giving them the gun. Now, I just had to make sure they pulled the trigger. The test came a week later. My phone buzzed. It was Brenda. Eliza, honey, she started. That sickly sweet tone she only uses when she wants something. Your sister. She's just so depressed. That old car of hers is failing again, and it's making it impossible for her to get to interviews. I waited. The microaggression. The test. Are you still the ATM? She found a new one, Brenda continued. A lovely little white convertible. It would just lift her spirits so much. And she can't get the financing. No, I said. Silence on the other end. I had never just said no. It was always a negotiation, a lecture, and then, finally, a yes. What do you mean, no? I mean no, Mom. I can't. All my capital is tied up. That was the line. The bait. The beautiful, perfect lie. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. She's broke? Her capital is tied up? That means she won't just give us money. Internal monologue. Oh, my capital is tied up, all right. It's tied up in your downfall. It's tied up in legal fees, and surveillance, and the concrete foundation of the house you don't know I'm building. I knew that this refusal would force their hand. If they couldn't get cash from me directly, they would have to get it from my assets. They would have to use the POA. They would have to sell the house. This was the boundary, the first real one I'd ever set. Not with words, but with action, or in this case, inaction. They hung up. I knew what was coming next. I made my final call. My head of ops, Evan. He's my most trusted employee. He's handled my most complex, high-stakes acquisitions. Evan, I said, I'm spinning up a new shell corporation. I need you to be the director. New acquisition, boss? Sort of, I said. I need you to buy a house, or rather, an empty plot of land that's being disguised as a house, and you're going to buy it from my mother. The last piece of the trap was me. I had to be absent or incapacitated. 2 weeks later, I announced it at dinner. I'm exhausted, I told them. I'm taking a vacation, a real one. 3 weeks, off the grid, going to Bali. No phones, no laptops. Liv's eyes lit up. Not with sisterly concern, but with greedy, electric opportunity. Brenda just nodded, that tight, forced smile back in place. Oh, that's wonderful, honey. You deserve it. I deserved it. The irony was suffocating. My vacation wasn't a rest. It was a strategic withdrawal. It was the waiting period. I needed to be physically, provably, out of the country so they could complete their scam without me interfering. I needed them to feel safe. The day I left for my vacation was one of the strangest days of my life. I was at the airport. It was 7 p.m. My flight to Bali was boarding in an hour. But I wasn't sitting at the gate. I was in the first-class lounge at a private terminal with my laptop open. My phone was on the table, not set to airline mode, but to a secure hotspot. I wasn't looking at flight times. I was monitoring the wire transfer protocols for the sale. My employee, Evan, the buyer, was in a conference room on the other side of town, closing the deal. At 7:15 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was an email from Evan. Subject: acquisition complete, body, sale finalized, funds transferred per instructions. They seemed very happy. Last week, as my mother would later say. He'd sent the secure link. I clicked it. I watched the feed from the small camera in his lapel. I watched my mother, Brenda, sign the sale documents with a flourish, using the forged power of attorney. I watched my sister, Liv, practically vibrating with excitement next to her. They didn't even read the fine print. They didn't notice the buyer was a brand new LLC. They didn't care. They just saw the money. The money, my money, routed from my holding company into the shell corp and then into an escrow account, was now being transferred to them. I watched the sale finalized email come through. I watched the bank confirmation. My hands were perfectly, unnervingly steady on the keyboard. There was no spike of adrenaline, no panic. Just this. Cold, profound stillness. I had let them. I had watched them, step by step, commit multiple federal crimes. I wanted the paper trail. I needed the forged authorization. I needed the fraudulent sale. I needed the wire transfer records. I needed the clear evidence of tax evasion, since I knew they'd never declare this windfall. I was building a case so ironclad, so perfect, that no one could ever call it a family dispute again. At 7:30 p.m., I closed my laptop. I picked up my passport. My vacation was over before it began. I wasn't going to Bali. I walked out of the lounge, past the gate for the Bali flight, and straight to the arrivals terminal. I got in a car and went to a hotel I keep under a corporate account. I boarded the plane home the next morning. They thought I was on a beach, halfway across the world, blissfully unaware. They thought I was running away, incapacitated by stress. I was coming back to light the match. We're back in the driveway. The cold air hangs between us. Liv is still frozen, her hand clutching the keys to her new white car. Brenda's forced smile has completely melted, replaced by a twitching, confused frown. Her voice is thin, unsure. The pride is gone. You recommended the buyer? When they mocked me just minutes ago, I wasn't angry. I wasn't shocked. I was waiting. All those months of surveillance, the silent construction, the late-night legal maneuvers, it all led to this single moment. This one. Perfect, inevitable question. I wasn't angry. I was waiting for them to ask the wrong question. This wasn't revenge. This was an algorithm reaching its logical conclusion. It was poetic. I did, I say. My voice is quiet. It cuts through the wind. I don't raise my voice. I don't need to. I reach into the inner pocket of my coat. I pull out a single, folded set of papers. You're bluffing, Liv snarls, but the confidence is gone. It's just a reflex. Read it. I hand the document to her. Not to my mother, who is already fading, but to Liv. She's the one who wanted this. She deserves to see the fine print. Her eyes scan the page. She doesn't understand most of it. She's looking for numbers, dollar signs, but all she finds is legal text. What is this? She snaps. This is just company crap. Look at the header, I say. The company seal. Now look at the date on the title registration. The real one. Her face pales. She's not a CEO, but she's not stupid. She can read a date. This, says the title was transferred 2 years ago. 1 year, actually, I correct her. To my holding company. The house you are standing in front of, the one you sold, it hasn't been in my name for a very, very long time. I point to the empty drill holes on the gate. That nameplate was a prop. This house was a prop. A stage. Brenda finally speaks, her voice a whisper. What are you? What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that the house you sold wasn't mine to sell. The power of attorney you forged? It gave you control over a decoy. An empty plot of land next door, registered under an old title number I knew you'd find. The sale you made, I continue, ticking off the points, is fraudulent. The buyer you sold it to, Evan's company, it's a controlled entity. It's my entity. And the money you received, the cash in hand you were so proud of? I lean in, just a little. It's marked for investigation. Every dollar, every cent. It's not a windfall, Mom. It's evidence. Liv is shaking her head. No. You're lying. Am I? I take out my phone. You seem to forget what I do for a living. I build systems, I find bugs, and you two, you are the biggest bugs in my system. You recorded every word, I say, not as a question, but as a statement. I press play. The air fills with their voices. Not the ones from today, but the ones from a month ago. The ones from my living room, captured by my own servers. Brenda's voice. She's so stressed, she's heading for a breakdown. Liv's voice. We have to sell it while she's gone. Brenda's voice. It's for her own good. And then, the one quote I've been waiting to hear again. Liv's voice, clear and sharp, dripping with contempt. So what if she finds out? She'll lose everything. Let her cry. It's our turn. Silence. Liv looks like she's been struck. Brenda just deflates, a puppet with its strings cut. She's trembling, and for the first time, it's real. Eliza. Eliza, my mother whispers, taking a step toward me. You can't send your own family to jail. We're family. That word, family. I look at the house they stole. I look at the new white car Liv bought with my money. I look at the two people who tried to destroy me. I didn't, I say. My voice is cold. It's a judge's gavel. The law will. I filed everything this morning. Forgery, fraud, financial misconduct, tax evasion, conspiracy. Every email, every recording, every forged signature. It's all in the hands of the district attorney. Brenda's mouth opens, a silent O of horror. I look at them one last time, standing in the ruins of the life they tried to take. You already did. I didn't stay to watch the fallout. I didn't need to see the red and blue lights. I just turned, my back to them, and walked away. By evening, the police came. I learned later, from the case file, what happened. I didn't watch them being taken away. I didn't need the visual. The new white car Liv was so proud of? It was the first thing to be impounded, seized as an asset purchased with the direct proceeds of fraud. Brenda, apparently, tried to use the "I'm a mother. I was just worried about her" defense. It didn't work. Not when faced with a mountain of digital evidence, audio recordings, and a forged power of beat tourney. Liv just shut down. The victim narrative doesn't really play well with a grand jury. But that's their story. Mine was just beginning. I didn't go to my old house. I didn't even look back at it. I walked down the street, to the next gate, to the house they thought was just a spec build, the real house. It was identical on the outside, but inside, it was all me. It was clean. It was secure. It was untouched by their greed. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was still. It smelled like fresh paint and new wood. It was quiet. Not just silent, but quiet. The kind of quiet that sinks into your bones. The kind of quiet that isn't just the absence of noise, but the presence of peace. I dropped my keys in the ceramic bowl by the door. I walked to the living room, to the real balcony, and looked out. I stood there for a long time, just breathing in the quiet. My phone buzzed. It wasn't the police. It wasn't a lawyer. It was a text from Evan, my employee, my ally, my found family. The text was simple. All assets secure. The decoy title is officially ours. The money is frozen, and the feds have the rest. Welcome home, boss. I smiled. A real one, this time. Not the cold, sharp smile from the driveway. This one felt warm. I stood on my balcony. The one my father had originally designed, the one I had rebuilt, plank for plank. I realized the quiet in my new home wasn't just silence, it was security. It was the foundation I had built for myself. It was the knowledge that my competence, not my forgiveness, was the key. My strategy, not my anger, was my strength. They thought my love was my weakness, the thing they could exploit. They never realized that my mind was my weapon. I wasn't smiling anymore. I didn't need to. Some debts can't be repaid in money. They'd learned that. Justice pays with precision. They took what they thought was my home, but in the end, I was the only one who had a home to go to. If you've ever had to build your own fortress just to protect your own peace, if you've ever had to become the strategist in your own life just to survive, then hit subscribe. Join a community that understands that sometimes the strongest boundaries are the ones they never even see you build.